Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to this new episode of E.C.O podcast. As you can tell, today's episode is going to be in English, and here with me are Diletta and Darina, who are going to lead us through the latest news. I like to start by talking a very important day, which is International Labour's Day. Here in Italy is a particularly felt holiday, let's say. There were many celebrations throughout the country. I could tell you more about it, as always, but I think there is somebody who knows more about it than me, and it's Diletta. So, hi, Diletta, and tell us more about the holiday.
Yes, so in Italy we celebrate this holiday on May 1st. It is a really important public holiday because it is dedicated to all the workers and the historical struggles that led to the labor rights that we often take for granted today. If we have to talk about how we came up with this holiday, we should probably go back to the late 19th century. Uh, a period of time where there was a rapid industrialization, where workers worked like really long hours and in unsafe conditions. These conditions brought to a protest in Chicago in 1986, where the workers have protested for like 8 hours or something like that. There are no official data. But that protest ended up in violence, and still now it is recognized as a symbol of global labor movement, which is what brought also the Festa dei Lavoratori, as we say it in Italian, in Italy, that was officially recognized as a holiday in the late 19th century, even though during the fascist period it was suppressed and then restored after World War II. And it is really important because also currently it is a moment of remembrance and a time to reflect on the current issues, the current unemployment and job insecurity and working conditions that, even though they are getting better than the 19th century, they still have many issues. And it is in Italy. It is marked with public events and demonstrations and concerts. One of the most famous ones is in Rome, and right now I think that is really important that we have to uh, also think about and feel what the workers in 1886 in Chicago were feeling, and not just simply celebrate the holiday because it's not a work day.
Thank you, Diletta, for the news. Also, as I said, it's an extremely relevant holiday even to this day because you mentioned it. The working conditions since the 19th century have improved, but they are still not the best. In Italy, especially, we had many casualties, work-related casualties. I mean, throughout the year, and not just this year, but even in the past decades, and even related to students, because I don't know if the people watching us know it, but in Italy we have something called the alternanza scuola-lavoro with technical high schools where students, so young teenagers, age 15, 18, go to workplaces to gain experience, and many of them get injured or worse because work regulations are not respected. So the fight for a safer work environment is still going, and while we fight for it, we remember the workers worldwide. And talking about worldwide, we are now on to the international news. As always, there are two main actors that are playing the game, and it's Europe and the United States. Recently, President Trump threatened to withdraw all the troops from Europe, um, which is not a recent threat. Actually, it goes way back to Eisenhower, even for those who like history. But as I said for the Diletta, could I tell you more? Yes, but Dadina will tell us more about it.
Thank you, Chiara. Good evening to everyone watching us. I just want to go back a little bit to the Festa dei Lavoratori because it's my first time being in Italy for the 1st of May. And I was impressed by the celebrations that you guys have, because in Bulgaria that is not a thing, even though for sure, like during communism, the working conditions were not up to standard. So I'm really, really happy that you guys consider it not only a vacation day, a holiday, but an actual day where you celebrate and you do manifestations, which is great. But yes, going back to the problem of the US, Europe, and NATO, it's no doubt that there is a growing rift between the US and NATO, and Trump has repeatedly threatened to withdraw the US from NATO. And the most recent threat from him was exactly the one of withdrawing the American troops from US bases, but specifically the ones in Germany, where there are the biggest number of American army men. To be honest, some people speculate that this threat from him came after the German Chancellor Merz criticized Trump's actions and handling of the Iran war, but I'll get to that later. But what does this potential withdrawal of the troops mean for Europe? As Trump and many military defense experts have said, Europe must take the matter of its defense in its own hands, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to investment. It was recently agreed that NATO members spend 5% of their GDP on military defense. In comparison, before it used to be only 3%. But if we think about where the arms come from, Europe largely imports arms from the US. So technically, for Trump, Europe's increase in military budgets would not only mean the US subsidizes NATO less, but it would also mean that the US tends to make large profits from that. However, with the war in Iran, the US has warned that there may be potential delays in the delivery of weapons. And also, interestingly, very recently, the US signed agreements with many Middle Eastern countries, such as Saudi Arabia, to receive troops from the US. So we can only expect that this would further delay the deliveries of weapons, because the US has already said that they prefer to prioritize replenishing their own storage of weapons. But I do want to say that obviously there stands the need for Europe to be independent when it comes to its capabilities of defense. But I mean, Trump has already proved that he makes decisions in a flash, so we don't want Europe to get caught unprepared. But I think Trump's criticism on European members of NATO not being involved enough in their own defense is a bit, I mean, yes, it makes sense, but when put in the context of Trump criticizing the same members for not helping him in the Iran war, it becomes a bit invalid, because, I mean, at the end of the day, NATO is a defensive alliance. It's not a bellboy or a butler, which comes whenever summoned by Trump. So I think it's the fact that the UK Prime Minister Starmer and also Merz and other European leaders have repeatedly said that Europe should not get involved in the war in Iran is, in fact, these remarks are very valid from them. But to wrap up, I just want to go back to what Merz said that may have triggered exactly Trump saying that he withdraws the troops. Actually, Merz criticized the US for handling the war in Iran the way it is, and he called the Iranians skilled negotiators, while the US, he considers them to be without strategy. And obviously, Trump took this commentary very badly, but frankly, obviously, Trump has his own reasons for feeling that way, but I think Merz is definitely being a bit hypocritical, because if we take a look at the war in Ukraine, Europe has definitely not done enough on that diplomatic front. There have not been enough diplomatic efforts when it comes to ending the war in Ukraine. It's already been 4 years, and definitely I think it's hypocritical to judge Trump for not being able to end the war, which only started when there has been a war in Europe for the past 4 years. And to be honest, sending the war packages and approving loans towards Ukraine is definitely not a means of ending this war. It's more about prolonging it, which creates further stability. So I think definitely this should be Europe's next priority, to end the war in Ukraine along with taking care of its own defense.
Yeah, there were a lot of talks throughout the last years about Rearm Europe, which is no longer called Rearm Europe for a number of reasons, and also the war in Iran surely shifted a bit the current geopolitical
Yeah.
atmosphere, which has become even more tense. And as you said, we still have a war going on in Europe. There seem to be a lot of very bold statements from worldwide political leaders. So surely the situation is ever evolving. And I'd like to thank Diletta and Adina for this wonderful news and for the recap of the week. And I'll see you guys the next week with a very new episode.